are coming up. But to start, I would love for people to just say hi in the chat box. Let me know where you're from, why you're excited to learn about fellowships, anything that might be relevant for the presentation today, because I just love to see who's on there. I'm going to put a chat in here just to say hi to everyone. Just in case you don't see the chat box, it's here. So I'll say hi, everyone. Hi, Renichi. We'll see who else is coming on. Miriam's saying hi. Hi, another Vicki. Great. Let me know where you're from, too, because I'm curious what countries and locations people are writing from. Awesome. Okay. Oh, Carl from Connecticut, someone from Maryland, Carlene from Queens, New York. Okay. Going back for your doctorate in educational leadership. Awesome. Irving, Texas, Minneapolis, Berkeley, Massachusetts. As I'm recording this, I don't know if you can see all these cool messages. Brian from Oregon, Molly from DC. Hey guys, this is awesome. Thank you for checking in, saying hi. Miriam wants to do her PhD in nutrition. Vicki's looking for fellowships for mid-career folks in the arts. Colleen from DC, hello. This is awesome. Melissa from Texas, heading to Washington for work. Great, get your MBA before turning 60. Awesome idea, I love it. So feel free to keep saying hi in the Zoom group chat. I think everyone can see you saying hi, so that's great. And people know that there's a community of ProFellow readers here. So let me just get started. Today, I'm going to tell you about how to find and win fellowships. And I think most of you are here because you know ProFellow. You're either on our mailing list, or you've used our database, or you're part of our International Fellows Network of alumni, or maybe you just heard about it by word of mouth. But in case you're somewhat new to ProFellow, we are the leading online resource for information on professional and academic fellowships. We founded the site back in 2011 when I was a PhD student because I wanted to help people find these extraordinary funding opportunities that we call fellowships. I've done 4 fellowships myself. I've traveled, throughout the world. I've earned my master's and PhD, received full funding for my PhD. And I would even say that I've used fellowships to even get where I am now as somebody leading a social enterprise, ProFellow. So at ProFellow.com, if you haven't already, you can sign up at that button that says Get Started to register for a free account to use our free fellowships database to find all sorts of funding awards, all the way from undergraduate study up to late career and executive level fellowships. I'm going to show you today in this presentation some secrets to using the database and getting the most out of it. And also, as you might know, we have a lot of articles on ProFellow, including lists of certain types of fellowships. We do interviews with former fellows to get their insights on the fellowship experience. I always ask them about their application tips. And we have all sorts of other resources. Often we have open calls for applications, which you can find on the main menu tab. And then, of course, I give all sorts of workshops. And we have a new ProFellow Academy, which is a platform I'll talk about a little bit later. So I just want to start by telling you a little bit about myself. Again, if some of you are new or maybe you just don't know who I am, I'm the founder and CEO of ProFellow. And as I mentioned, I'm a 4-time fellow. I worked in public policy for about 15 years. Then I spent some time sort of testing out academia as a career track. And then I moved into creating ProFellow. And I would say I call myself now an entrepreneur. But back in the day, when I was in college as a senior, I had no idea what to do next. Now, I was a government major. I was a sort of a B average student. I wasn't in honors. I wasn't in anything. I wasn't any sort of student that people thought, I was going to go on to do great things. One thing maybe that differentiated me is I did a lot of community service when I was in college. But I still was a pretty ambitious person. I sort of was thinking about my career, want to do something socially impactful, work with people. I was sort of picturing myself like this woman here, at some point in my career, sort of giving talks and being just moving up through the career track. I was interested in government, nonprofit work. I didn't have a clear idea which area I wanted to work in. I had a lot of interest in the whole public policy, sort of social impact realm. And I also had a really interesting study abroad experience that just completely opened my eyes to international travel. Of course, at that point, I had no idea that, living abroad again, other through that study abroad experience was possible. So I just sort of daydreamed about this. How could I live abroad again? But I had no idea how to do that at this point. I also had no idea about the Fulbright Awards, which a lot of people apply to when they're seniors in college or right after graduation. So I started on my job hunt as a senior in college, and I very optimistically put out a lot of applications in government jobs, policy think tanks, etc. I got no callbacks. I didn't get a single interview for an entry-level job when I was a senior. I don't even really particularly know why, except maybe I was going after the wrong jobs or couching my application in the wrong way. But I was very fortunate to sort of, by sheer chance, come across a brochure for the New York City Urban Fellows Program in the Career Office. This was a one-year professional fellowship in New York City government for recent graduates. They were recruiting people from all over the country, and essentially it would give you a full-time work placement in New York City government, and you would get to choose from a wide variety of agencies that you could work for. And it also included seminars on local government. There was a study tour to DC. There's all these sort of other kind of curricular parts to it. And I thought, oh my God, this is my dream job. This could get me on a career track. It would get my foot in the door into New York City government. So I put all of my eggs into this basket preparing the application for this. I did a lot of research on the fellowship and who it's for. I wasn't particularly encouraged by my advisors to go after this. They kind of thought, go for it. But, there's going to be other, top students at your school who are also going to be applying for this. So, keep in mind the competition. And so, okay, I took that grain of advice and moved on. But I applied for it. I put in my all. And I was selected for the 2001 cohort of New York City Urban Fellows. This was, like I said, this was a dream job. I moved to New York City, and we actually moved there the week before and started our cohort experience the week before 9/11. So we were there just a couple blocks away from the World Trade Center attacks when they happened on 9/11. And because of that, then they had to shuffle around and get us into our work placements. So I had an opportunity to work at the New York City Office of Emergency Management that year as a fellow. This was a career track that I didn't even know existed. I did not know what emergency management was or what it entailed, but it seemed to be sort of an extraordinary once-in-a-lifetime experience to work in the recovery and response operation during that year in New York City. And this set off my track in the world of disaster management preparedness for the next 15 years. And I also kind of worked in public health and other areas. So this was just, again, kind of set off my career. This is a really terrible picture from back in the day, me with Randy, one of my fellow fellows. This was on our study tour to DC. So this was just one of the many perks of the program. And I should say I worked in New York City for about 2 years. And then I had it in my mind, wait, there might be other fellowships out there. And so I started searching and doing research on the internet, which if any of you were around about the internet in 2001, it isn't what it is today. So I had to do a lot of research, talk around. And then I discovered that there was something called a German Chancellor Fellowship in Germany. And so my dream of going abroad again suddenly was coming to fruition. So this was a one-year fellowship for people with a couple years of work experience up to about age 40 to go live for a year in New York City, work in Germany on a self-designed project. So this isn't my cohort, but we had the chance to meet with Angela Merkel. I worked on my own project and my own design for a year. I got to learn German. I didn't have any German skills. Again, an adventure of a lifetime to live in Germany for a year. Actually, it was more than a year. And then I'll have to quickly get through the story, but I also went on to do a Herbert Scoville Jr. Peace Fellowship in Washington, D.C. So I had the chance to work in a policy think tank for 6 months. I did then also, I worked in other jobs in policy in D.C. I got my master's in London. And then later at mid-career, actually before this next fellowship, because of the fellowships in my background, I, at the age of 30, was appointed to be a policy director of a congressional commission under the Obama administration. And so I really credit that to the fellowships that I had previously, because it gave me a really strong network. It gave me experiences that were unique on my resume. I was kind of learning all the social psychology of pitching myself, even in job interviews. So all of that came from the fellowship experiences. Then after that position, I went on to do an Ian Axford Fellowship in Public Policy, which is a specialty award by Fulbright that is a 7-month policy research fellowship. And there I also then serendipitously got into a PhD program that had full funding in New Zealand. So again, my career kept kind of going in unexpected directions, but all through fellowships. So it's a long story. There's a lot more to tell about it, but I just want to say it all started with that first fellowship that I put my heart and soul into that application. And it was just by luck that I found that opportunity. But my goal was to help you find these things I call fellowships, because all of them are extraordinary in nature. And there's now more than 1,200 programs listed on the website. So if this had existed back in the day, I would have been one of the biggest fans of it. So just to get into what are fellowships, because this term is a little bit confusing in the way that people think about it. What we call them is short-term funded opportunities to do something exceptional. This is our definition. And really what we call fellowships are funded. So if it's got some sort of stipend or grant attached to it. A stipend is usually functions like a monthly salary, or there's kind of a one-time grant that's awarded to you. There can also be other benefits like housing, health insurance, opportunities for travel, relocation benefits, even family benefits. So always funded. Secondly, they're short-term. So unlike a job, there is a definitive end date to the fellowships. A typical fellowship term is about 1 year, but there's some as short as a few weeks. There's some as long as several years, but they have a definitive end date. They're also competitive and merit-based. I'm going to tell you a bit more about the application process for, a typical fellowship program or an award, as it would be called. And I should mention, these are not financial need scholarships. They are merit-based. They're based on sort of your trajectory as a professional or student. And they have a lot to do with not just what you've done till now, but actually more to do with your potential for what you'll do in the future. The other thing is that I would say all fellowships are socially impactful. They all have some sort of social impact mission. So whether that is research that is looking at environmental conservation, or it's a program to revitalize a economically depressed city, or they're looking to create more diversity in a certain industry, there is a larger, broader social impact mission that is connected to the fellowship program. And I also say that they're life-changing because fellowships are prestigious, competitive. They open doors. They introduce you to leaders in the industry. You meet new professional networks. So even though in some cases the stipend or salary may be lower than what you'd make in a job at the same level, there's a lot of other benefits that have a long-term impact on your career. And they, like I said, they sort of move in interesting ways. If I had not done the fellowship in New Zealand, I definitely would have never even thought or considered to apply to a PhD program there, and nor would I've gotten the full funding package. So they kind of move you in all sorts of interesting directions. So I just want to say that what we call fellowships, there's a lot of programs in our database. A lot of them are not called fellowship in name. So some of them, there's programs that are more well-known, sort of like Teach for America or Peace Corps. They're not called fellowships. They don't have the word fellowship or fellows, but we consider them fellowships because they meet these criteria here. So just so you know, that's our kind of broad umbrella term. It was the best way that we could sort of describe what we're talking about here. So beyond that, let me just talk to you about why you should apply to fellowships. So first of all, some fellowships allow you to pursue a self-designed project or research. So it can be anything from something professional in nature to scholarly research or even professional research. Some of the professional fellowships will allow you to gain high-level work experience in your industry or that foot in the door to an industry. They can also be a great way to work or study abroad, to go to a foreign country. which usually the only other alternatives are to find a job abroad, which is not very easy to do, or to do a volunteer experience that you self-fund, or just to travel again on your own dime. So fellowships will provide you the funding and logistics to go abroad. They can also help you achieve funding for graduate school, and if not full funding, as I call it, which means tuition and a stipend. So I talk quite a bit about full funding for graduate school, both at the master's and doctoral level. And in all cases, like I said, they will broaden your professional network. So there's a lot of professional benefits that come out of these fellowships, whether you're doing a professional or academic one. So I've talked a little bit about the professional academic. Here's sort of the distinction between the two. So the professional fellowships typically function like a full-time job or work placement, but again, with a definitive end date. Or they give you the grant and autonomy to work on a professional project. Some of them are funding social entrepreneurs to work on their enterprise. Some are discrete grants to write a book or do some sort of professional activity. So those are kind of bucketed in this, they are bucketed into this professional realm. Then on the other side, which are sort of the more well-known types of fellowships, are called academic fellowships. And these are funding for graduate school or for scholarly research. So whether you're going to get your master's, your PhD, or you already have a PhD and you're doing postdoctoral research or just faculty level research, there are a whole wide range of academic fellowships. And then I should say there's also some that sort of straddle the two, that have both a professional and academic element to them. So there's kind of a small number in between. So let me just go through some myths about fellowships. One myth is that fellowships are just for recent graduates or for PhDs. This is totally wrong. Some of my most favorite fellowships that I like to promote and talk about are the professional fellowships for people that are at mid-career, have 5, 10, 15 years of work experience. There's also a lot of fellowships, that are not for academic research. So you don't necessarily have to have a PhD. There's even research grants that are not for that can be for people with just a master's. So there's all sorts of fellowships at all career levels. Another myth is that fellowships are only for people with top grades and awards on their resume. This is also wrong. I mentioned a little bit before about thinking about the social impact mission of the fellowship. So fellowships, what they are really are investments. So while maybe a top school or top grade on your resume may seemingly sort of make your application stand out, you're not necessarily a shoo-in just because you have that on your resume. And also people who feel that they don't have those things already, for you, it's really about couching how you're going to advance the organization's mission. So they're for people at all levels. If you have the drive and the focus and motivation to apply for a fellowship, that alone puts you ahead of the game. There's a lot of people that won't apply just because they worry about the competitiveness. Secondly, a third, fellowships, there's a myth that fellowships are only for people with straight career paths. So if you're not sure what you want to do, or you're actually been on a career path and now you want to change, there's this idea that the fellowship wouldn't be for you. That's actually completely wrong. Like I said, early in my career, I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I graduated, nor was I really that successful applying for jobs. But fellowships are a great way to explore different industries, to get skills that you don't currently have on your resume. And also the very key thing for me was to build that professional network, which really helped me further down the line when I was looking at jobs. So it's not just for people with straight career paths or career ladders. And also people just think, oh, there's very few fellowships for my goals. Now, you might have a very specific goal in mind, but I'm going to show you today how to broaden your idea about how you can creatively apply fellowships to different goals. So there might be a goal, a smaller goal within that larger realm where you can use a fellowship. For example, write a book, or you can, as a social entrepreneur, you could perhaps use a fellowship just to broaden your professional network in a certain geography. So there's kind of ways that you can get at your goals through fellowships, even if the fellowship isn't specifically funding what you're thinking of. So let's recap the truths that I just mentioned. One, there are fellowships at all career levels for all citizenships ages, career paths, and disciplines in the database. And I'm going to show you how to find these. Secondly, the awards are not always called fellowship in title. So if you're thinking that it's only in there if it has the word fellowship in it, it's not true. There's lots of programs that are not necessarily called fellowships, but they're funded, competitive, and short-term. And you can search 1,200 plus award programs at ProFellow. This is not 1,200 individual awards for 1,200 people. These are award programs. So there is literally thousands, if not maybe over 1 million awards for individuals in the database that you can pursue. So, just keep that in mind. And we're continually adding more every week, 3 to 5 new programs a week. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to give you a little demo of the ProFellow database. I'm just going to take a quick peek in the chat to see if there's any questions so far, or if people just still saying hi, which would be great. Okay, hello, more people coming in. What just happened here? Sorry, I'm somehow squiggling on my thing. We've got Jean from Michigan. I'm gonna get your name wrong, but PhD in Earth Science and Policy. Served at OEM as an AmeriCorps member in 2015. I wonder if you mean New York City OEM. That's awesome. Okay, let me see here. I don't know how I made this squiggle on the screen. How do I get rid of that? That's crazy. Okay, well, I'll just have to deal with it for the moment. Let me go in. Oh, it went away. Let me go into the database and give you a peek about how to use this. Now, let me clear the filters here. Take out this keyword. Now, if you sign up at the website, you will have created a profile to come in. I just want to mention with ProFellow that if you create a free account on ProFellow.com, you can be assured that we're not selling or giving away your email and personal information to third parties. Some of the some of these big scholarship engines like scholarships.com are actually selling your third-party data. That's how they allow you to use it for free. We don't do that. It's completely our community here, and we primarily just use that data to help you to narrow down to the right fellowships, and it helps us determine, what kind of fellowships of interest people are looking for, so we can continue to add more of those to the database. So when you filled out your profile, which you can always change in the top corner, in your profile icon, you can just, for the first part, you can come in and use your profile filters. Oh, let me just mention here, we currently have 12,009 programs listed here in the database, if you can see that. That's all of the programs. So when you come in, if you have no filters, you will see all 1,200 programs. Now, if you're really ambitious, you can try to go through every single one, but there's a few ways to quickly filter out ones that you won't be eligible for. So one, you can put in your profile filters like this, which will auto-populate, these filters. I like to sometimes keep these a little bit broader because sometimes people put in too narrow of some search filters. So let me just describe a little bit some of these filters on the side. The one first filter that you should use is your citizenship. So if you are if you have a U.S. citizenship, if you put that in, and likewise, if you're from another country, that will automatically narrow out ones that you wouldn't be eligible for because you're a U.S. citizen. So if you're from Uganda, if you're from Germany, if you're from China, you can put your citizenship in there, and that will narrow out ones that you're not eligible for. I mean, some people think that these are only for U.S. citizens, but I was just speaking with someone from Uganda, which is why I was looking. So if you put in Uganda as your citizenship, you'll see that there are still 577 programs that you are potentially eligible for. So don't believe that because you're not a U.S. citizen that there aren't awards. So that's one way to narrow it down. And then next, you can go into the fellowship type. So I sort of mentioned to you that, we kind of have a bucket of professional fellowships and academic fellowships. The professional fellowships, the ones that function like short, full-time work placements or even funding to do a professional project or a self-design project, advance an enterprise, do a writing project, those will be listed as professional fellowships. So if you're looking for something that does not have a study or PhD level research associated with it, then I would say select professional fellowship. And then otherwise, we also have, there's fellowships for undergraduate students. These are primarily research fellowships or study abroad fellowships. There's also graduate study and doctoral study, and these will be for people pursuing who are in or wanting to get into master's or PhD programs. And then we also have postdoctoral research, which I should mention is for any kind of programs that would require you to have a PhD. So I know postdocs typically are for people who just recently graduated for a PhD. But even if you're an experienced academic, I would suggest using this filter because there's also research grants for faculty and other things, and they're bucketed under the postdoctoral research category. There's also this category called summer fellowships, which are essentially like paid internships at a high level because they're fellowships that are great for enrolled students. So there's some for undergrads, graduate students, doctoral students. So if you're looking for a summer experience, I would suggest looking there. There are even some summer fellowships for professionals. So you might want to even take a look if you're looking for something short term. So, I usually look in a professional category and do that. And then that will narrow down to those that are professional. And let me just do United States so I can show you some of the, I know that's most of you are from the US, but go through here. Now, in the discipline filter here, again, you'll notice very kind of broad categories: education, social sciences, medicine, science, engineering. There's not many. I think there's about 12 here. So for these categories, we did that because, there's so many disciplines, subdisciplines, that we've tried to generally bucket things into these major categories. But the one good thing is that if you were, say, looking for journalism fellowships, those would probably be under communications as sort of your broader subdiscipline. But you can use the keyword search for other types of, for smaller subdisciplines. So if you put in journalism, and I'm going to show you more keywords like this, that will narrow it down to anything that is either tagged with journalism or has the word journalism in the description of the fellowship. So there you can narrow down. So, you can do things like public policy is a big category on our website. You could do teaching if you're looking to get into teaching or are a teacher. There's teaching fellowships. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm still in the communications category. You can even keep the disciplines open and then see what comes up. So teaching, these are all teaching and teacher-related fellowships. Could be public health, which would be listed under medicine and health sciences, but there's a wide range of public health fellowships and so forth. And another big one is, social entrepreneurship. I get a lot of inquiries about that. So people building social enterprises, there's quite a few fellowships in that realm too. So the keyword search is great because that will help you with these other types of looking for those subdisciplines. Now, if you have a really niche fellowship, a niche subdiscipline, for example, someone asked me about educational tourism, that is unlikely to come up in the name of the fellowship description. I haven't seen a fellowship specifically for that very specific topic. That would probably go under broader categories like tourism, hospitality, business, that sort of thing. So keep in mind always, if you have a very narrow discipline, try to think of what broader disciplines that would go under. And you can use this keyword search to find those here. Also, we have this location filter. So if you are looking for a fellowship in the United States, then of course pick North America. Most of these are in in the United States, although we do have some fellowships based in Canada within this list. So you can just put that in and you can identify ones that are either in the United States or can be done in the United States. And then also, but if you're looking for a fellowship outside the US, then you can use these other broad discipline location categories. So if you're looking for something in Europe, and you can use the keyword search. Say you're looking specifically for programs in Germany, you can use the keyword search for Germany. And these are all specifically ones that are in Germany. Now, just keep in mind that there may be some broader fellowships that can be done in Germany, but may not say Germany on them. That's why it's sometimes better to just keep your fellowship location broad in Europe and sort of take the time to go through and see, is this a research grant that says they just want to fund people to do something in, say, US European transatlantic relations. That could be done in Germany, but it might not be tagged as Germany. So keep that in mind when you're looking through awards. I also want to show you about this work experience. Often people say, oh, there's no fellowships for older people. There's no fellowships at mid-career, late career. There is. One thing though, is if you use this work experience filter and put in 10 plus and then only look at those awards, you may actually be filtering out awards that are a great fit for you, because many fellowships have no age requirements or even work experience requirements. Research fellowships are case in point. Usually it's more about, are you eligible based on your academic background more so than your age or requirement. And the same is for graduate programs. I think there's a misnomer that you can't do a master's or PhD later in life. That's really untrue. You have to make the case as to why you're doing a graduate program at age 50 or 60, but it's totally is possible, and there really shouldn't be any kind of, there isn't really age requirements for graduate programs. So it's more about making the case as to, what are you planning to do after the graduate program at this stage in your life? So I would say actually keep the work experience filter off if you just want to have a broader search. Make sure you don't miss any great opportunities. And that's another, these are just some ways to use these filters. Again, you can also find fellowship by name, put in a country, a keyword. Oh, and I want to show you up here, we have sorts. So you can sort by newest, which means the most newly added ones to the database. You can also do a deadline sort. So this will show you the ones, let's see, today, the deadline for these just passed, this Young Leaders Program, but this will start to put these in the order of deadline. I should also show you, though, that if you do it the opposite way, it's actually going to show up first all of the ones that have rolling deadlines. And this means these are fellowships that you can apply to at any time of year. So I would encourage you to look at these fellowships that have rolling deadlines, because you could apply for these as soon as this month or, 6 months from now. And then of course we have an A to Z sort here too. Now, other thing some people don't realize is that you can click on these listings, and they'll take you to a little more information about the fellowship. However, we keep the descriptions of the fellowship super short for the purpose of helping you skim the records and sort of narrow out things. So if we had all the information on here, it would just be information overload. And it's also quite difficult to keep the information up to date year to year. So I would always encourage you to click this blue button over here, go to website on the fellowship listing, and this will take you to the main page. If you find a fellowship that you're interested in, I really encourage you to look at the main website, check and confirm deadlines, check and confirm eligibility. Don't rely purely on the ProFellow information. We do our absolute best to keep the listings as up to date as possible, but often we're dealing with, sometimes we're putting estimated deadlines on here based on the previous year's deadlines, which can sometimes be out of date. And we rely on the fellowship organizations to be in touch with us and give us updated information. But as you can imagine, that doesn't always happen. So if you find something, make sure you go to the main website, read more about it. Usually here you'll find information about what the program offers, who the alumni are, who's running this, what the mission is. So it's always great to look at the website. And then the other key thing is to bookmark it. If you find one, you're like, yeah, I definitely want to learn more, even if you don't have time in that moment, you can add it to your favorites by clicking this add to favorites here. And then when you go back to the main fellowships page, you can find your favorites again in this show favorites button here at the top. So for everything that you've bookmarked, you can just hit show favorites. And these are ones I've bookmarked for various, demos and things. And then to get out of this list, you can just unhide it. And I should say you can also bookmark if you're doing the big major scroll here, just bookmark it here. So I want to take some questions to see sort of what sort of things that, let me show you a few more keywords. So one is to help you find mid-career fellowships. We have tagged with mid-career. We clear these filters over here. There's tags like mid-career. So if you're looking specifically for mid-career fellowship, we have 86 fellowships tagged as mid-career, and there may be more. We also do words like short-term. If you're looking for something that's maybe just a few months or a few weeks in length, try the keyword short-term. We even have, we recently added a tag part-time for people who want to just do a fellowship maybe in a part-time way or remotely. There's a couple of opportunities for that. If you're looking for full funding for your graduate degree, look for the word, use the keyword fully funded. I'm sorry, it's a little bit delayed because of the internet. Let's see here, fully funded. This is going to bring up fully funded PhD programs, fully funded master's programs, as well as fellowships that fully fund graduate school. If you're kind of looking more for the master's, just do the filter graduate study. We've kind of bucketed more master's programs in that. And as you can see, this is Woodrow Wilson Academy. This is for a master's in education, fully funded. Bloomberg Fellows, this is for a master's in public health at Johns Hopkins. This is Stanford University Scholars Fellowship, Knight Hennessy Scholars Fellow. They give 100 fully funded graduate degrees each year and all sorts of various types of degrees. So there's a whole bunch like that. So if you're looking for a fully funded master's, do the graduate study and the fully funded keyword. And then, of course, there's even more fully funded PhD programs. So I would encourage you to look through that. If you're in the creative arts realm, there's a lot of creative arts fellowships, and we do have a broader creative arts discipline. But there's a lot of things within creative arts. So if you are a visual artist, I would say use visual or visual arts. There should be quite a number tagged with that. It could be that you're in film, you can look at film. And so look at those, although I would say just to be safe, keep your search broad, just select creative arts and see what comes up, because again, the description itself or the tags may not have the word visual arts, but you may still be able to do a visual arts project under the fellowship if it's a multidisciplinary fellowship. Just as an example, I did a German Chancellor Fellowship in Germany, which was taking 10 Americans to go and do a self-design project. 2 of those Americans were doing creative arts related projects in Germany. It's not really promoted as a creative arts fellowship, but one person was doing a project in theater. They were working with a theater director for the year, helping put on performances. Another was doing a sketching and sort of museum installation project as part of his fellowship. So there's also, the reason I say keep it broad, your search, is because if it's tagged with this broader discipline, it means that it's open to you as a creative artist. So for example, this Young Leaders Program is just an international exchange program between the US and France. It's not a creative arts fellowship per se, but it's open to all disciplines. So you as an artist may be interested in doing an international exchange with France. So this is one of the ones you could consider. Okay, I'm going to get into the chat and just look at some other questions. So if you're looking for a particular thing, I will give some clues as to how you can find it in the database. So let me just see some things that people have asked about. Okay, fully funded PhD fellowships. So I mentioned how you can find those. Oh, Miriam was asking about fully funded PhD fellowships that can be used in any university. I do a whole workshop on funding for graduate school. I want you to keep in mind that it's actually easier to get internal full funding from the individual university, the internal funding, than it is to get an external fellowship that has full funding. Usually most external graduate PhD level fellowships, the ones that are funded by foundations, companies, government agencies, usually only fund, 1 year of research for your dissertation or something of that sort. There's very, very few full funding awards that you can apply to that could then be applied to whatever university that you get into. So what I would encourage you to do is look at fully funded PhD programs. And that means the university will say when all of our incoming accepted students are going to be provided full funding, which means a stipend and tuition. And I just want to say our list of fully funded programs on ProFellow are definitely not exhaustive. We've kind of given some examples, but what you can do is look into the university, see what they say about finances and how they finance their PhD students. If they say they offer full funding or they're fully funded, that means every student that's accepted will get a full funding package. So I encourage people to always apply to some of those programs. Your dream school might not have a full funding offer to all its incoming students, but if you include some fully funded PhD programs in your repertoire of schools that you're applying to, you may be able to then better negotiate funding, internal funding from the university, because you could say, look, I got full funding from University of Wisconsin, and you guys gave me nothing. I really want to get into your program. What do you think? The funding is absolutely critical for my success. So that's kind of one way to negotiate, but I would encourage you to look at fully funded PhD programs to apply to. Yes, advice on best practices for applying to fellowships. Yes, I'm going to go through my 3 tips later in the presentation here, so stay tuned. Oh, fellowships for writers. This is one of my favorites. So we just tag writing fellowships with writing. Sorry, it's a little slow here. Do writing, and you'll come up, there's 91 results that have been tagged with writing. And these are all sorts of writing fellowships, from academic writing, creative writing, editorial writing. There's all sorts of awards. So definitely use the word writing as your keyword. There is 91 results, so you could further put it down by creative writing or nonfiction writing, but I feel like I would just be concerned that might narrow it too much. So if you have an hour, go through the skim here and see if you can bookmark some awards that might be of interest for writing. What might you look up for the study of aging gerontology? Good question. Now, what you want to do is think about what is the broader disciplines that something like the study of aging would be under. There actually is some fellowships related to aging, although I think it's spelled like this. Let's see. Oh, no, it's not. Aging. There's a couple of actually fellowships specific to aging. So you use the word aging, the Health and Aging Policy Fellows Program, Journalism Fellowship, Long-Term Care, but you might need to look more into medicine and public health as your broader discipline categories, because again, there might be a general public health fellowship that you can do an aging-related project under, or aging-related focus under. So try. I would say do broader medicine, public health, and see what comes up in that, or health policy even. Specific tips for reporting and or book projects. Yes, I, again, used the word writing to go through. It is 91 results, but I think it's worthwhile to look through each one. For reporting, I would also say look at journalism. And for book projects, you can look at publications. Oops. Oh, I was writing that there. Publications. Sometimes the word publication or publications might be in the title. See, there's a couple of grants here for publication. Sometimes you have to use, add an S and see what comes up, but I would try those. But I would say look at the writing fellowships for those. This is a good question. Are there official, unofficial guidelines for beginning career, early career, etc.? We do have, for early career, recent graduates, I would say use the keyword recent graduates. If that's less than 5 years of work experience since your undergrad. And there's a lot of fellowships tagged with recent graduates. The thing about the word mid-career is that different organizations use it in different ways. So someone could say mid-career and they mean someone with just 10 years of work experience. And others, when they say mid-career, that means somebody with more than 20 years of work experience. So it's a little bit, it's hard because they categorize it so differently. When I did the Ian Axford Fellowship, I was only 31. So that kind of, but there was somebody else in my same cohort who was in his 60s. So, mid-career, that's kind of, we were all at different stages in our career. So, but in terms of just kind of narrowing it down in the database, I would say recent graduates is good for early career. You can do mid-career for the mid-career opportunities. I've even put in for particularly experienced professionals, just the keyword experienced professionals. And there's some here that will say that they're looking for people who are at an advanced level in their career. And there's even retired professionals. I started doing some tags for that. And we have a couple here that are actually looking for retirees. So that's just a couple of keywords that you can use. Let me just see a few more. Yep, aging, I would say look under public health, depending on what angle you're looking at. If it's clinical research versus policy research, might be different things. Someone was asking, I've been looking for fellowships in international relations with a focus on working on a conflict issue. So conflict can come up as a keyword, I think, in some of these conflict research fellowships. The word peace may also be another kind of get around to looking at ones that are looking at peace and conflict resolution. So you'll see there's a lot of peace-related fellowships. So what I would do is just think about what are the various permutations of that word, conflict resolution. There's also, again, if you narrow it down too much to just conflict resolution, because I know that's your particular topic, you may actually rule out fellowships that, again, are more multidisciplinary in nature, but would allow you to do a research-related project. So, one of our disciplines is international affairs. We have a lot of things that are in this. Let's say if you wanted to do a professional fellowship in that realm, I would say it might be worthwhile to look through some of these, because there may be, again, a broader multidisciplinary fellowship where you can do a focus on conflict. So again, you can really, unfortunately, just narrow out awards that could be great for your goals if you don't leave your search a little bit broader. Yes, we have fellowships for dissertation writing. I would say just use the word dissertation. That comes up. The word dissertation is in a lot of these fellowships, 64 to be exact. You can also more broadly just pick doctoral research, doctoral study, and then use the word research in case they're saying that it could just be field work, research. It might not be the actual dissertation writing part of your thing, but there's also, there's 204 results for research fellowships that can be done as a doctoral student. So try those too. Keep it broad, as I said. All right, Indigenous issues. So Indigenous issues might be under, I don't know, minority or underrepresented groups. It could be. I think the word Indigenous is actually, I think there are ones specific to this. There was one, I put on doctoral study only. So there's 3 that come up that are very, specific to Indigenous issues. However, again, you may be able to do an Indigenous related project under a broader multidisciplinary fellowship. In fact, when I did the Ian Axford Fellowship in Public Policy, again, you can do a self-designed project. So there was fellows before that had done work with the Maori community in New Zealand. So I would say, as I keep mentioning this, look up the self-designed project. I've been using that as a keyword to identify all of the fellowships that allow you to do a self-designed project. And these are just some of them that you can consider. Things like the Fulbright Awards are a great scholar awards. That's a great opportunity to do research in any discipline. So I would also say look at that keyword self-designed project. Now I'm going to move. I'm sorry if I didn't get to everyone's questions, and I am going to get to application tips. So let me just get to the next part of my presentation. So I hope that was helpful. So have some fun later today or this weekend checking out the database. But I do, again, getting back to this idea of keeping your search broad and thinking about your goals, I want to talk about 10 ways to use fellowships like you've never imagined. So some of you may think, I'm doing a dissertation. I'm only looking for dissertation research fellowships. And then you actually might be missing out on some great opportunities. Or likewise, you're thinking about a career change, so you're looking specifically for career change fellowships. You have to think more broadly about how you could apply these different types of awards to your goals. So the first one, of course, if you are an undergrad or just recently graduated, fellowships are a great way to get your foot in the door into any industry. So use that keyword search using recent graduates. Like I said, the New York City Urban Fellows Program was my foot in the door into government. After applying and putting my resume into the black hole that is the job search engines for the government agencies at the state, federal, local level, this was the way that I got my foot in the door and sort of secured a track in New York City government. So that's one reason, get your foot in the door. There's others. SV Academy is a business development fellowship that helps get sort of underrepresented people into Silicon Valley jobs in business development and sales. So that's another great way to kind of get your foot in the door into a very, very competitive job market. So keep that as one idea. Second is just advancing in your career. So no matter what career track that you're in, mid-career, early career, you can advance by pursuing a professional or summer fellowship that gives you new skills, that allows you to develop your subject matter expertise, that broadens your professional network in that. So you, for example, Humanity Action is a program that takes place in Europe that looks at different forms of discrimination. So they take people at early career from all over the world. The Eisenhower Fellowships are one where you can do this is for more experienced professionals, and you are funded to create an itinerary of meeting industry leaders in another country. So in Europe or people coming to the US, you're going to build a whole itinerary of various professional contacts and leaders and spend 3 weeks meeting with people in your industry. Huge career advancement doing that. So I would say, again, keep your search broad to find these unique professional fellowships in your industry. Third, you can fund a master's or PhD. And so, like I showed you, you want to filter by type: graduate study if you're looking more in the master's realm, and then doctoral study if you're looking for a PhD. And do that keyword search using fully funded if you're looking for programs that will cover both tuition and provide a stipend. Now, there is a little bit of both. There's more in the PhD realm in terms of full funding, I will say. But there is a couple. The National Urban Fellows Program is a fully funded master's in public administration. And then likewise, there's fully funded PhD programs listed. Again, the PhD programs are not exhaustive in our database. I mean, there's literally too many to list. So if you're even looking for full funding PhDs, I mean, just do a Google search. If you're looking for a PhD in cultural anthropology, do PhD cultural anthropology and put full funding in quotations in your Google search and see what comes up. Also, here's one of my favorites: travel the world on a fellowship. So again, when I was graduating, I had no idea that I could ever go abroad again, other than purely out of pocket in a volunteer capacity or vacation capacity. So when I discovered that there's these international fellowships that not only provide you a stipend, they paid for flights, they paid for visas, they gave you a cohort and a community and a whole structure for being successful. So extraordinary international opportunities that really can set your career track. And these are early career and late career, mid-career. So take a chance to look through the database. And some are also very short-term sort of exchange opportunities, and some are, a year or more in length. So I did German Chancellor Fellowship in Germany, but Peace Corps is an example. Global Health Corps is a program that takes people from the US to go to Africa working in global health, and also Africans to the US working in the same topics. Number 5 is advancing your own enterprise. So if you are someone who has or is desiring to start either a nonprofit or a social enterprise, a for-profit with a social impact angle, there's actually a wide range of fellowships that could help you do that. Now, I should just say, fellowships fund you, the individual, the founder of the organization. They won't fund. They're not like grants that fund organizations or help you pay for employees or help you buy equipment or that sort of thing. They do fund you, the individual, but a lot of the fellowships also provide leadership development curriculum. They introduce you to leaders in the industry. They provide just other resources and benefits. They might even invest in your company if it's a for-profit. So I would strongly, if this is something you're thinking about or already doing, check out, use entrepreneurship or social entrepreneurship as your keyword in the search. And you can find some of these fellowships like Ashoka Fellows, the Draper Foundation grants, Tech Women. There's quite a wide range of these helping to support the founder. Oh, here's my next favorite is take a sabbatical. So everyone dreams of taking a sabbatical, but usually this sounds like something that only, tenured faculty do. But more and more people who are working even just in corporate world or nonprofits are starting to take sabbaticals. But the question is, most of us can't get a paid sabbatical where the company keeps paying for our salary. And it's also even just hard to, even if you could get an unpaid, it's often difficult to sort of, negotiate that with your boss. But if you were able to win a paid short-term fellowship, not only could it help cover your costs while you're, maybe going unpaid, but it could also be prestigious enough that your boss might say, okay, great. You can make the case this is helping me professionally. This is going to help me grow the organization. So this will help me in my role as a professional. So I'm not taking a 3-month vacation. I'm doing a prestigious professional fellowship that looks good for me, looks good for you. See what I mean? So you could take a sabbatical on a fellowship. So use that keyword search short-term to find the short-term fellowships that could help fund a sabbatical. Now, keep in mind, a sabbatical, this isn't a vacation. I mean, you would be doing something, a project of some sort, but maybe that book you've been meaning to publish, or you want to do maybe you've been working in the corporate area and you really want to do something, take a break to do something socially impactful for 3 months. The Lone Mountain Fellowship is a writing fellowship in Montana that you could use. That's geared toward environmental conservation policy experts and lawyers. There's other kind of short-term ones. You could do a Peace Corps Global Response Program. You could do a summer fellowship like Urban Leaders, which takes people for 7 weeks in different cities throughout the US. There's so many great things. So check out the short-term fellowships for your sabbatical. Also, we have lots of artists and people that use ProFellow to find grants for their projects. So like I said, keep your search broad by just using the kind of main discipline filter and put in creative arts. But you can use other keywords. And one that you can use is artist in residence for the funded residency programs that take place in the US and abroad. So some of those are just like the American Academy in Rome. There's a children's writers in residence program at one of the museums here in the US. There's a lot of interesting projects, but you can also try visual arts, film, photography, dance, theater. Try those different kind of subdisciplines and see what comes up. But I say, again, keep the search broad to creative arts because there could be a multidisciplinary fellowship that you could do a creative project under. Then we've got fund your research. So there's all sorts of research grants for individuals at the undergraduate, graduate, doctoral, and postdoctoral level. So if you're looking for a grant to do some field work, spend a summer somewhere doing some research, archival research in libraries, these can help fund travel, the resources to get your research set up, dissertation research. So just use the word research in your thing by filter down to the type of level that you're at, and then use the word research to find the many types of research fellowships available. Another interesting one is change careers. We have tried to tag some fellowships that are specifically actually geared toward career changers. And one big one is they're always looking for people in STEM backgrounds and industries to go into teaching, since there's a severe science and technology shortage of people with expertise in that. So there's a lot of fellowships that will not only fund your master's in education, but will give you all the resources and learnings that you need to become, a K through 12 teacher. And these exist not just in the US, but also in other countries. You could also, there's also fellowships that are looking for people that are coming from the corporate sector and now want to move into the social impact, nonprofit or government sector because of the skills that they bring. So one of those is Fuse Corps, which is really targeting people with more than 15 years of corporate experience to go and work in cities and work with mayors and other leaders at the city level to solve big challenges with their skill set. So look at the ones called career change. But again, you can also keep your search open to professional fellowships and see, what they're looking for in candidates with various backgrounds. And then finally, I just say there's so many fellowships to just do something exceptional. I mean, they're all exceptional, but there's some really gems in this database that will allow you to do super interesting stuff. So the TED Fellows program is a really competitive fellowship, but it's a kind of a part-time fellowship that takes people who are doing really interesting research or advocacy work or founding unique organizations, and they are trained in public speaking, and then they go and give a TED Talk at the main TED conference that happens each year. So that kind of can set your career in a whole new direction through the TED Fellows program. The Field Fellowship is for people, it funds people who are entrepreneurial to skip college and start companies. Who would have thought, So that's another interesting kind of oddball fellowship. And even the Einstein Fellowship, this is funding for people who are working in a certain academic discipline as a graduate student or scholar. And they want you to go to Einstein's cottage to study a completely different discipline for a short period of time. And it's a cohort experience. You get to work in Einstein's cottage in Germany. So totally new. It's just to inspire new thinking and build a new cohort. So that's just a really unique fellowship. So this is why I encourage you to really scroll through all of the results that come up, because you might come across one of these really interesting fellowships that you would never have imagined existed. So I'm really excited to just know, what will all of you do now that you know how to use fellowships and what you could find in the database. Now, next I'm going to get into the tips. Let me just see if there was any related questions about this section, and just see what have come up. Yep. Okay, someone said they're looking for fellowship to study apprenticeships, but that search term seems to be confusing. Do you mean you want to do academic research on apprenticeships, or you want to do an apprenticeship? Just let me know that. Fellowships in many ways can function like an apprenticeship if you set it up in that way. So that's one possibility, doing a professional fellowship that almost functions like an apprenticeship with somebody. Oh, academic research. Well, I wouldn't use the word apprenticeship because it's unlikely. I mean, that's such a very, very niche and narrow topic, academic research on apprenticeship. I would just look for a research fellowship and look for a multidisciplinary one. I don't know what angle you're taking, if it's a policy angle or a psychology angle or a human resources angle, but you could, again, try to think of the broader umbrella terms for the discipline that would fall under. And then someone said they've been looking to establish experience in international social enterprise development, but not my own personal, but supporting others in business development. What would that search be? Oh, I would actually just use the keyword business. For example, there's a really interesting fellowship called the Africa Business Fellowship, where you can help African companies. This is they're looking for young American business leaders to work for 3 to 6 months, hands-on work experience at a top African-led company in one of these. So they want people with at least 4 years of business experience, but that's a way that you could help social enterprises. So I would use business, social entrepreneurship, and international development might be another tag that sort of comes up. There's a couple for groups like I think Fugo is looking for people to work on their portfolio of companies. But yeah, social entrepreneurship and social enterprise actually might be one that helps you find those particular fellowships. Someone asked, is there fellowships for hybrid or fully online PhD programs? Now, unfortunately for online programs in the PhD world and for part-time, remote, other kind of fellowships, they usually don't provide funding. The full funding packages usually come in the form of graduate research teaching assistantships and research assistantships or teaching assistantships. So they're usually only open to full-time students. I'm not particularly sure why. I don't know if they feel that you, if you're working full-time and doing a PhD part-time, that you wouldn't be able to commit to something like an assistantship. So that might be the reason that they're only offering those to full-time students. But it is also very difficult to find online funding for online programs. Often those online programs exist as another source of revenue for the university. So they are basically looking for people who can pay for that out of pocket. And so they're targeting more people who are going to be working full time or doing this on the side. Whereas so it actually can be cheaper to commit full time to doing your PhD, and you would get it done sooner. So unfortunately, I would say, it would be difficult to do that. Now, the other thing I would say with PhD studies is that I know you might have a topic that you're interested in studying, but I often find that the dissertation topics that people want to pursue can sometimes fall under a lot of broad categories. So for example, somebody said they were really interested in doing a PhD looking at urban transportation systems. And I said, well, yeah, you can certainly do that in urban studies, urban policy PhD programs. You could also do that under the realm of just a public policy master's, education master's, public administration master's. You could, not master's, PhD programs. I mean, there are other broad categories that you can do a dissertation topic under. So be sure not to limit your search in Texas to just PhD programs in one specific discipline, because and also sometimes these PhD programs have different names. So look at all the programs within the local universities that have full funding and see if you can study what you're interested in within those programs, even if it's not in a topic that you expected. And then remote postdoctoral fellowships that can be done online. That's a good question. I'm not sure about that. What I would do is suggest looking under the postdoctoral research fellowships, and then see if any of them say remote. There might be, but it might be that you want to do maybe more like a research fellowship versus specifically a postdoctoral fellowship. I think usually the postdocs, since they function like jobs, I think typically they don't, really have remote opportunities. That might take a little more research. Okay, I'm going to get into the tips now. My top 3 insider tips. And but let me first start with the good news and the bad news. So the good news is, as I mentioned, we've got 1,200 programs listed at ProFellow that you can search and bookmark and consider. So you have a lot more opportunities available to you than you think beyond sort of the really well-known ones, the Rhodes Scholarships, the Fulbrights. There's a lot of opportunities that will offer you the same experiences and funding that you can get from some of these more well-known and highly competitive fellowships. The bad news is that you still have to really compete for these fellowships. They still get a lot of applications. And I should say, and I do tell this to Harvard students and people going to these top universities, that just because you have top universities and top grades on your resume doesn't necessarily make you a shoo-in for the fellowship. It really is about your story and your potential. And what you've done till now demonstrates your skills and your ability to be successful in a fellowship. But it's really about pitching what you're going to offer to the fellowship and beyond. So first, let me just tell you, application for a fellowship, if you've never done one before, it's a little bit more like graduate school than it is about, than it is like a job. So typically, you have to put in your resume. Sometimes you have to include transcripts. Almost always there are reference letters, a personal statement, which could be about a page or 2 pages, but it can also be in the form of responses to short answer questions. If you're doing a self-designed project or research, typically you also have to include a project or research proposal showing how you're going to do the work. Sometimes you even have to be in contact with a host institution, especially for some of the international fellowships. You have to find a host during the application process who says they will mentor you, host you if you win the fellowship. And then often there are individual and group interviews for fellowships. Now, another thing people don't realize is that often the fellowship deadlines are anywhere from 6 months to a year before the fellowship begins. So it's different than a job in that, you can apply for the fellowship and then the funding, and then it just starts immediately. That's not the case in most cases. There may be a couple that do that, but in most cases, there's a pretty long period between when you apply and when you start the fellowship. So that's why it's always good to look early. And also to even bookmark fellowships that you're not eligible for now, but you could be in 1, 2, 5, 10 years, because then you have it on your radar. Okay, this postdoctoral fellowship, I'm only in my 2nd year of my PhD, but this is a postdoc I definitely want to apply to. And so I'm going to keep it on my radar because I'll need to apply to this about a year before I finish. So keep it in mind that it is like this. Some fellowships that are some of these kind of shorter international exchange or other ones, some of them don't have as intense of an application as this whole list. And I think more fellowship organizations are trying to move toward having kind of easier, more streamlined application. But in most cases, they're still pretty old school and they do it this way. So this is something that, you have to put a lot of time into. And if you have 6 months before a fellowship deadline, I say get started now. I would not suggest waiting until a month or 2 before the deadline to get started, because sometimes it takes a while to get things like reference letters or to really figure out the story for your personal statement. And even in that 6 months, there might be a few key skills or things that you don't have to highlight that you could actually get in the 6 months, whether that's taking language classes, getting a volunteer experience on your resume so that you have a stronger public service or leadership experience. There could be some things you can do in the next 6 months to strengthen the application. So I say start early and always kind of keep your eye on the deadline well in advance. Now, my whole philosophy about applying to fellowships is don't be the best applicant, be the most prepared applicant. I knew when I applied for the New York City Urban Fellows Program that I wasn't going to be the best applicant in the traditional sense of the word. I wasn't an honor student. I was a B average student. There wasn't, I didn't have any leadership. I wasn't chief or head or running any clubs or doing anything. The only thing that I had that really strengthened my application is that I had, a lot of community service on my application that I, that I did, but that wasn't even really necessarily at a leadership level. So I knew I had some convincing to do, and I knew that I had to be very well prepared and well spoken in terms of why they should pick me over candidates that did have all these things. I also didn't even have any fancy DC internships or anything like that. I worked at, Chili's restaurant every summer. So, I mean, I was thinking to myself, man, I'm definitely not going to be like the top candidate, the best candidate. They've got people applying from all over the country, from other Ivy Leagues and other things. So I just set out to be the most prepared and to convince them that I was their girl. So the first thing I did was I aligned my goals. Now, everyone needs to understand that when you're applying for a fellowship, it's not about your goals. It's actually about the fellowship organization's goals. So every fellowship has a social impact mission of some sort. There's a particular reason that they are funding people to do whatever research, experience, development that you're doing. And it's not to help you, the individual, although that is something that comes out of it. It's because you as a fellow, you're part of a much broader goal that they are trying to achieve through the fellowship program. And often that mission or goal is not particularly clear, nor will they might not even ask you about how you feel about that goal in the application. So they're looking to see if people have keyed in on what the mission is. So first and foremost, if you're trying to understand what is the purpose of this fellowship, why are they funding individuals every year to do this thing? Look for the mission statement, read up on the background of the organization, the founders, why they created it, what they're funding and why. Usually there's a broader mission like they're addressing educational inequality. They're bringing diversity to new industries. They are trying to build international relations between the US and other countries. There's usually a much broader social impact goal. And then it's really up to you to mention and discuss how you are going to help further that mission. So it's not about your project. It's not about, making you the most successful career person. It's really about telling them, I am going to do these things in my career, but this is, I'm also going to be contributing to your mission of doing X. So look at the mission statement. Also look at what they've previously funded, because that'll give you an indication of what they value, where they want to put their money. The other thing you can do is identify what they brag about to get some kind of clues as to why they're doing this. So, for example, when I applied for the New York City Urban Fellows program, there wasn't really much info. They had a really there wasn't much on the website. There really wasn't anything on there that indicated why they were doing this. I mean, they talked a lot about the benefits to the fellows and that, all these great things that you're going to get out of the program. So you might think it was very much about you, the individual. But then I did hear the director speak about, say that, well, 80% of our fellows go on to work in city government. And we're recruiting all these great people for long-term careers in city government. That lit off a light bulb in my head. And I thought, oh, that's why they're doing this. They're looking to get a pipeline of top recent graduates to go work in New York City long-term. So they're not looking to get the best applicant who's going to go on to grad school in another state. They're not looking for the best applicant who's going to go work in DC and federal policy or go on to lobbying or other things. They're looking for candidates who are interested and committed to working in New York City government. That's their mission. So they didn't ask in the application, do you want to work in New York City long-term? They were looking for people to specifically say that in their applications. So it was a very indirect way. And I do think that is one of the things that made my application rise to the top, because I understood the mission and I spoke to it in my application directly. So do your research, try to figure out what the mission is, and be sure to speak about it and how you're going to further the goal. Remember, it's not about you. It's not about the project that you're doing or what you're going to get out of it. It's really about them and what they're going to get out of it. And that will put you way ahead of at least half of the applicants that have applied to the opportunity. My second big tip is to be really specific, not only in your career goal, your 2 to 5 year career goal after the fellowship, but if you are proposing a project, I say to pick something really narrow and something that's feasibly done in the time period of the thing so that they can be certain that you're going to be successful. So you want to have a really clear and compelling application story that explains why you are doing this award, why you're doing it in this place, and why you need to do it right now, and why you. So why should they select you? And the reason I say to go narrow and to be more specific is, one, it makes your application more memorable, because if you talk about really specific kind of niche things, it just stands out more. Oh, that person was doing studying beekeeping, or that person was wanting to go to this specific law school program, or this person, it just stands out in your head when it's not like a vague kind of overarching goal, like I want to work in nonprofits. I mean, that's way too generic. Let me give you some examples. When I applied for the Ian Axford Fellowship in New Zealand, and again, I thought it was a little bit of a long shot since I was only 31 when I was applying, and it was a mid-career fellowship, but I was working in this congressional commission, and we were generally looking at a lot of topics on children and disasters. And I thought, well, I could go to New Zealand and just look at how schools in New Zealand prepare for disasters, because they have a lot of they have earthquakes, tsunamis. It's a very disaster-prone country. So I thought this could be a good topic. However, if I had just proposed that in 7 months I was going to just study how schools prepare, it would have raised a lot of questions. One, they would have said, well, who studied this before? Why is this is kind of broad. So how is this going to help New Zealand and help you? It would have just raised so many feasibility and sort of questions about the purpose. So what I did was I spoke first to the ministry that was going to be my host, the Ministry of Civil Defense. And I asked them, what are your needs? What are you doing in the field of children and disasters? And what are your needs in this area? What are your priority areas? And they told me that they had just released this new curriculum program a few years before, and they had never evaluated it. So they never determined how much uptake and how it was being used. And that was a huge need for the university. So instead of just studying broadly how schools would prepare, I proposed a very specific narrow project evaluating the effectiveness of a single program in New Zealand schools. And I made the case that by doing this, I would provide some data to the US about how they could do something similar. So there was a mutually beneficial thing. And it was super beneficial to the ministry, who was also involved in this process, because they were able to say, this is something we really need. We don't have the staff or the resources to do this. So it would be a huge benefit to us to have Vicki come and do this project. So I got bing, 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 all of the ducks lined up by doing this very narrow project. So I think if I had done like a broader study how schools prepare, it just would have been not memorable, not feasible, really, and just it wouldn't have shown much benefit to all parties. Also the same if you're not doing a project, but just applying for a professional fellowship. I see a lot of people when they do their applications, they'll at the end, they'll just say, yes, and after this fellowship, I want to go to law school, or I want to get my master's, or I want to do a PhD. I want to work in international development. Like just very vague, broad kind of goals about what they want to do. So then it's not really clear why do you need the fellowship? I mean, you could stay in your current job and go to law school in a year. You could just get a job in international development. So why do you need the fellowship? So that's the thing. It raises the question of why do you need this fellowship? So one example I give is that let's say you were applying to Foster America, which is a professional fellowship that has people with a legal background or people interested in the legalities of the foster care system come and work on for a year and get practical experience in sort of the legal and operational aspects of the foster care system. And if your career goal is just to attend law school, there's not a very strong kind of reason like, okay, well, it's a good reason to do Foster America, I guess, but you could still do that. You could also say something like, pick one specific school that you're really keen to go to and talk about what it is about that school that's unique, and then what is it about the fellowship that will help you achieve the goal of getting into that specific school. So for example, I want to gain practical experience in public interest law to strengthen my application to Florida State University's College of Law, which has a unique children's advocacy clinic. So then it's like, oh, this person wants to go to this specific school that has this specific area of expertise in children's advocacy. And so I can really see why the Foster America is an important piece of that puzzle of getting into that program and being a competitive candidate. And then also, oh, great, they're furthering our mission of helping, of working in the field of children's advocacy. Do you see what I mean? So it ties in with the mission, super specific, and not to mention, it just makes it appear like you know exactly what you want to do and you know exactly where you're going. And that instills confidence in the selection committee when you have that level of confidence. Now, the disclaimer is, look, I know most of you have probably a lot of goals or a lot of schools that you want to go to. Most people don't know what they want to do in 2 to 5 years, and that's okay. And often I will say the fellowship may even put you in a totally new direction. and you may do something totally different than what you proposed after the fellowship. That's okay. I do say you should pick an authentic goal. Don't just make up a career goal. That doesn't serve you well, and it doesn't serve the fellowship well. But think, I'm just saying, if you're thinking about going to, say, graduate school as your kind of 2 to 5 year goal, just be specific, pick some schools, and make the link as to why this fellowship benefits your application, becoming a competitive application for that program. And do it in a way that aligns with the fellowship's mission. And that will give you a much stronger story arc. And then my final, tip is about storytelling, which kind of draws into this last one. So the story, your application story, as I call it, is this. The beginning is kind of where you've kind of gotten to, why you are where you are now, what you've done till now. And then you talk about where you want to be in 2 to 5 years post-fellowship. What is that specific goal that you are really keen to achieve? And then the hero of the story is the fellowship. How does that fellowship help you achieve that 2 to 5 year goal? And so it's got to be really clear that if, in some cases, if you don't get the fellowship, the goal may not be achieved. So the fellowship is the hero. You're not the hero. The goal isn't the hero. It's the fellowship is the critical piece in the puzzle. Now, a lot of people do have this story, but they don't express it well in their story arc. They don't really make it clear that, if I don't have this fellowship, there's no other opportunity to work abroad. There's really no other opportunity to get this kind of work experience in this field at this level, or it's going to be something I'm going to do in 5 years. So make sure to tell them how you're going to capitalize on their unique value as the fellowship. Show them how you're going to contribute to the fellowship's goals beyond the fellowship through your 2 to 5 year goal. That's the story that they want to hear. They want to know that you're going to further their mission, both during the fellowship and beyond, and that you're going to be meeting your goals, and that you're going to capitalize on all the unique things that the fellowship has to offer. And that's how you build your story arc. So like I said, it's not so much about everything you've done until now. You use your background and your experience as a way to demonstrate that you have the skills, the confidence, the drive, the self-sufficiency to be successful on the fellowship. But what you really need to express and pitch is what you're going to do beyond the fellowship. So to always think about, what's my potential? How have I expressed my potential? And that's how you become a winning fellowship applicant. So I want you to get started on your looking for fellowships in the database. I want you to start applying in the next 6 months. So I've taught you today how to search the database for some ideas, how to bookmark fellowships of interest, and then go to the website, look for a little more information. You can also, make sure to research the fellowships more closely, and even including ones that you're not ready to apply to yet, just so you have a good sense of what they offer and when you should apply. Put those application deadlines on your calendar with kind of, internal deadlines for yourself so that you don't get behind and don't have it all rushed at the end. And start your applications now. I mean, there's a lot involved in researching the mission, putting together your story, thinking about, again, there might be skills or things that you can get on your resume in the next couple months that you don't already have that would strengthen your application. So think about what they're looking for in candidates, identify the mission. It is a bit more work, but I say that success is directly the level of effort is directly correlated with the level of success. And I think this is true in this case. I told you that, for each of my fellowships, I prepared like a champ. I mean, I was so focused. And I was actually, by my 4th fellowship, I was very optimistic that I was going to win it, even before I heard back about interviews, because I just felt like, I knew what the mission was. I told my story. I spoke to their needs. I spoke to New Zealand's needs, that sort of thing. So that's how you become a winning applicant for these fellowships. Now, let me just tell you some other resources, and then I'm going to get into some questions. But number one, we've got this new advising platform called ProFellow Academy. And I'm in there where I post ideas and tips. We've got videos. We're even doing office hours this afternoon. So if for some reason I didn't answer your questions today in the session, you can join our office hours at 1 p.m. Pacific time today. If you get into ProFellow Academy, you can get the link there. There's all sorts of things, and you can meet other people that are aspiring to do great things. So please join ProFellow Academy. It's totally free, and it's just a great way to kind of meet the ProFellow community in person beyond just, the ProFellow website. I also want to mention briefly that I have a new ProFellow Accelerator program that includes one-on-one advising with me that I'm launching in the next few weeks. And this is an ideal program for any of you if you're a young professional who is really motivated, but you have a lot of different career interests. You're not sure which direction to go. Maybe you're a little bit like I was back in the day, where you had lots of directions and just wanted to do something socially impactful. It's also great for people at any level who are just looking for funding or a professional opportunity to do something socially impactful. Or if we've got lots of international opportunities. So I advise a lot on that, on people who want to travel, work, study in a foreign country. This includes advising on how to create a competitive application for things like the Fulbright, which is super, super competitive. So this is going to have all my strategies and tips in one place. So that's for the Fulbright, but there's also a wide range of other awards that you could apply to in addition to Fulbright. And then also graduate school applicants. If you're going to be applying this year to graduate school, there's a lot of ways to make your application stand out over other top candidates. And a lot of it, again, is social psychology and writing techniques and pitching yourself and getting in that mindset. So I'm going to send all of you details about this program, and you can respond to me if you're interested in learning more. And here's the thing, guys, whether you use the free resources or come to one of my workshops, the ProFellow readers win fellowships. These are all real people who have won fellowships through tips and strategies and fellowships that they found on ProFellow. This looks like a young skew, but there's a lot of people in mid-career and late career as well who have maybe don't want to do testimonials, but these guys offer their testimonials to say, look, I'm successful thanks to the strategies that I learned through ProFellow. So I'm going to open it up for questions now. So if you have any more questions, I know I've been talking for a long time, so let me just see if there's any additional questions that I can answer while I'm on here. And I'm going to stay for another 10 minutes here just to make sure. And I'm going to go back a little bit. Someone had asked earlier, Bob had asked, how does one make their application stand out? I hope some of my tips were helpful in terms of the competition. And I should say too, guys, if you use my tips, you're going to knock out at least half of the applicants out of the running, because I'll tell you, a lot of people don't do these strategies when they apply. And they're often baffled as to why they didn't get, people very confidently then are baffled as to why they didn't win the fellowship. And usually it's a mismatch that they didn't touch on the mission of the program, or their project wasn't feasible because they proposed something too ambitious, or it just wasn't clear as to why the fellowship was really that necessary for them to achieve their goals. It was just sort of sounded like a nice thing to do. So a lot of people go down that route and they're not successful for those reasons. So those are things that you can address yourself. So make sure to do those things in your application. Okay, thanks, guys. And some people are saying thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for joining. And sorry, I got a little too far back. Someone asked, do you think people in their 40s can get into a PhD program and get a job in the US after the program? I don't know about, academic jobs in the US following a PhD. I would assume that being in the US to do your PhD would allow you to get the academic and professional networks that you need to get a job. I know that for some, to be honest, I can't advise on like the whole visa process here. It is just really, really complicated and crazy. And I know a lot of people who have even studied here are not able to finish studying or get a job here for various kind of just visa and immigration issues. So I really can't, I don't know. I'm not really sure, but can you do a PhD at 40 in your 40s? Absolutely. There was people in my PhD program. There was one woman who was 70. So I think, I don't feel that you're too old to do a PhD. It's more about your story. You have to explain why you're doing a PhD, and it's got to really be in alignment with what the university wants to fund. Why would they select you? Are you going to help them further research in an area that's important to them, or advance some other mission of the university program? That's really what you have to make the compelling story. Amy asked, does it help or hurt to give your financial situation? For example, to make the case that why you need the fellowship to meet goals. Well, here's the thing. The fellowships are not financial aid. So they're not going to pick you because you say that you have a financial need. A lot of people have a financial need, and that is not the reason. So for them, the fellowship is an investment. And you should always think about that. It's not to meet a financial need in the world. It's really an investment to further a social impact mission. And that even includes, graduate programs. They're trying to advance research and be top of their game among universities globally. So they want to pick the top students who are going to be the most successful. So most of these things are merit-based. And so mentioning financial need will not strengthen your application. And if anything, it might even distract from the story that you need to tell, which is how you're going to help them advance their mission. So I would just suggest focusing on why you are a great candidate, why you have the right skills, the drive, how you're going to help them further their mission, and how you're going to capitalize on the unique value add of the fellowship to get to your goals. And that is what will make you successful. Oh, Jean said, thank you. Wish I had the information you shared today before submitting a fellowship. It may have made a difference in the results. Well, thank you. Well, now you know. You might even consider reapplying now that you know some of the strategies. So I would encourage you to think about that. Someone asked, people saying, thank you, you're welcome. Very helpful to learn about all the resources. Do you recommend applying for several fellowships all at once? That's a good question. To be honest, I myself have not applied to multiple fellowships, mainly because I would find one and then I would be fully focused on just, doing that one, because I also had full-time jobs and other things. Although when you apply to graduate school, I do say you should apply for multiple graduate programs. Don't just only apply for your dream school or the local university. There is other reasons you should apply to a range of graduate programs for reasons like, if you get a funding package from another school, you can help that negotiate the dream school that you got into if they didn't give you funding. I always think you should apply to 2, 3, 4, 5 graduate programs at least to kind of keep your options open. And the other thing is that some people think, I would never move to relocate to go to university, but then, things can change in a year. So, keep your options open. But yeah, I know lots of people that apply to multiple fellowships, and especially for, the recent graduates who are applying to say a Fulbright in a foreign country, you might want to also at the same time apply to some of the other international fellowships as alternatives to the Fulbright, since the Fulbright is very, very competitive and gets lots of applicants. There's other kind of lesser known fellowships that can give you an equally amazing international experience that you might want to consider. So if you're putting all the work in and you're talking to referees, you could kind of, in some way, combine efforts. Like, for example, with the referees, you can ask them for 3 letters at one time versus just 1, and then asking them again a year later. So, I mean, if you can manage the time to do that, certainly do it. But don't do it at the sake of where if it means that all of your applications are not going to be well done because you're too spread thin trying to do them all, then I would say would not be a good strategy to do that. Someone asked, are people with master's degrees more or less likely to be strong fellowship candidates? I just went to grad school immediately after college. Oh, that completely depends, actually. If it's a more research-focused fellowship, having the master's could give you a leg up because you might have some research experience from your master's. Likewise, some of them are specifically looking for people with master's degrees. So right then, you're ahead of the game. But I think it just really depends on what they're looking for in candidates. So if they say that they're looking for people with work experience, then you might not be eligible if you don't have any work experience yet. But if it seems like it's open and you have a master's, there's no reason you couldn't be a strong candidate just for the sheer fact that you don't have any work experience yet. Oh, Carlene said she just found her perfect fellowship. Great, Carlene. You should write to me in ProFellow Academy and let me know what you're going to apply to. And by the way, there's a little delay when you request to join ProFellow. I kind of go through and make sure there's no spam and things. So it might just take a few minutes or a couple hours until you're approved. Great. Any other questions? Because I am a little bit over the time. I would just encourage you guys to go to ProFellow Academy. It's right here, the profellow.mn.co. I'll be looking for all of you to be joining. And you can also even message me directly there in ProFellow Academy. And then I'll also send you this information about this ProFellow Accelerator program. I just want to mention there's only 20 spots, some of which are already booked for this program. So if you are interested after you get the email, be sure to follow up with me right away. Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And I look forward to seeing you inside ProFellow Academy and on ProFellow. Thanks, guys. I appreciate all. Thanks you. Oh, thanks, Jean. Share it with your kids. Share it with all your friends, please. All right. Thanks, guys. Take care.